So picture this. It's the 1980s, a decade of, slick pop and massive hair. And then, out of nowhere, this gang of musical rebels just crashes the party. They're armed with banjos and tin whistles, and they're mixing the fury of punk rock with the very soul of Irish folk music. They were the Pogues, and they were about to tear the whole damn house down. All right, so to really, really get the Pogues, you've got to start with their name. Not the one they're famous for, but their first one, Pogue Mahone. It's this cheeky, kind of phonetic jab at the establishment. It's basically a two-word manifesto that says everything you need to know about their attitude. So where did this rebellious streak even come from? Well, for that, we have to go back to the gritty, chaotic world of late 70s London, where the punk scene was just blowing the doors off the entire rock and roll establishment. Yeah, you gotta remember, these guys were all punk rock veterans. Shane MacGowan and Spider Stacy, they first bumped into each other at a Ramones show way back in '77. A few years later, in '82, they team up with banjo player Jem Finer, and they've got this wild new mission to take the traditional Irish music they grew up on and jolt it back to life with a massive shot of punk rock adrenaline. I just love this. It shows their totally punk rock approach to making so-called folk music. Take James Fearnley, for example. He was a guitarist, right? But the band needed an accordion player. So what did they do? They just handed him one in a laundry bag and basically said, here, figure it out. And that learn-as-you-go chaotic vibe is exactly what made their sound so raw and so exciting. So you're probably wondering, how did this chaotic idea actually become a real recording band? Well, let's dive into how they managed to unleash their revved-up silk punk on an unsuspecting world. Their debut album in 1984, Red Roses for Me, was an absolute bombshell in the super squeaky clean world of 80s pop. I mean, while everyone else was messing around with synthesizers and drum machines, the Pogues came roaring in like a tornado of acoustic instruments, singing about the raw, gritty reality of working-class life in London. And this is just so important. They weren't just another band. For a lot of people, they were the voice of the London Irish kids living in Thatcher's Britain. They took these old songs, these songs of struggle, and made them feel urgent and relevant again. They were reclaiming a heritage that was so often dismissed or just flat out ignored. So for their second album, they brought in an absolute legend who totally got them, Elvis Costello. He saw their brilliance, but he also saw their chaos, and he didn't want to clean them up. No way. His whole goal was to capture what he called their dilapidated glory by recording them live, trying to bottle up all that raw, ferocious energy right there in the studio. And the result? It was a masterpiece. Ram Sodomy and the Lash was a quantum leap forward. You've got the mythical rage of the sickbed of Cuchulainn, the beautiful, heartbreaking poetry of A Pair of Brown Eyes, and the absolute gut-punch social commentary of the old main drag. This is where Shane MacGowan really showed the world he wasn't just some punk screamer. He was a lyrical genius, plain and simple. The critics absolutely loved them, the cult following was there, but the Pogues were about to get huge, and it all came down to one song. A Christmas tune that was, well, anything but jolly. Okay, get this. In the UK, Fairytale of New York is the single most played Christmas song of the 21st century. Seriously. More than Bing Crosby, more than Mariah Carey, a song about two bitter, arguing immigrants in a New York City drunk tank. I mean, how wild is that? The story of how this song actually got made is just as messy and dramatic as the song itself. Believe me, this was no carefully crafted pop hit. Not even close. So it all starts with a bet to write a Christmas song. But it took 2 long, painful years of rewrites for MacGowan to strip away all the cheesy holiday fluff. And the final magical ingredient? That came when the producer, Steve Lillywhite, was desperate for a female vocalist and asked his wife, Kirsty MacColl, to just sing a rough take as a guide. Well, her performance was so raw and so perfect, it became the legendary version we all know and love today. But with that global success came fame, money, and a whole lot of pressure. And for a band that really thrived on chaos, that was a recipe for disaster. The very things that made them so great were about to tear them apart. The next few years were just tough. Shane MacGowan's drinking and drug use got worse and worse, and he became more and more unreliable. The band started to experiment with other musical styles, bringing in more global influences on albums like Peace and Love and Hell's Ditch. And that just didn't sit well with Shane's purist vision. By the time they got to a tour of Japan in 1991,
Things were about to completely explode. And then the unthinkable happened. The Pogues fired Shane MacGowan. To finish out their tour, they brought in another punk icon, Joe Strummer of The Clash, to take over on vocals. It was a shocking, unbelievable move, but one that many in the band felt was totally necessary to save the band and maybe even to save Shane himself.
But that is not the end of the story. Not by a long shot. The music of the Pogues was just too powerful to fade away. So now, we come to the final chapter. Reunion, loss, and the incredible, enduring power of their songs. In 2001, the classic lineup actually got back together with Shane for a series of amazing reunion tours that went on for more than a decade. But, time, it always catches up. They lost their brilliant guitarist Philip Chevron in 2013, then bassist Daryl Hunt in 2022, and then, in November of 2023, the world said its final goodbye to the heart and soul of the band, Shane MacGowan. The love and respect that poured in after he passed, it was just unbelievable. Tributes came from everyone, rock royalty like Bruce Springsteen and Nick Cave, but also from the president of Ireland himself, who called him one of music's greatest lyricists. It just made it so clear that he was more than a rock star. He was a true national treasure. And the music, of course, lives on. For their 40th anniversary, the surviving members are out on tour. But how do you replace a legend like Shane MacGowan? Well, the answer is, you don't. Instead, they've invited a whole new generation of incredible Irish folk singers to share the stage with them, passing the torch and keeping these incredible songs alive. Accordionist James Fearnley put it just perfectly. He said the band is like a stable molecule. The original members are the core, right? The foundation. And that strong bond allows new people to come in and bring their own energy and their own interpretations to these classic songs. So, we're left with this question. The Pogues took old traditions and made them new, exciting, and dangerous. They gave a voice to the forgotten and created a soundtrack for life's highest highs and its lowest lows. But as new voices carry their songs forward, it really makes you think, what is the soul of a band? Is it the people who started it all? Or is it the music they left behind for the rest of us?